Hi, everyone. I am back to report on the Dana Rivers trial. There was another session of the Dana Rivers trial on Wednesday, the 14th of June, 2023. And the session began with the judge basically going over some of the complaints that Dana Rivers had about the previous trial. So Dana Rivers had submitted 26 complaints about his previous trial that he said rendered the trial unfair and that they should dismiss the trial and get a new trial. Okay. And the judge went over these 26 complaints and really hammered home the message that they were all very petty. I'll just briefly summarize. Dana Rivers complained that he wasn't allowed to get a haircut because it was too unsafe to offer a haircut for him. Once again, how is that relevant to anything? Dana Rivers complained that the use of the term defendant and victim somehow prejudiced the jury. Come on, what else are you supposed to call the people involved in this? There was a complaint about a photo that was shown. So during the trial, the judge said he didn't want a photo of Charlotte Reed and Patricia Wright's wedding, but then went on to show a photo of the wedding anyway, and the judge clarified that he only wanted the formal wedding photos not displayed, and that it was okay to show this informal wedding photo that wouldn't have sort of sentimentally prejudiced anyone. In any case, how is that relevant to anything? There were also complaints that the judge did or did not admit certain pieces of evidence, like the judge didn't admit all the mental health records, but for Rivers, but those mental health records weren't all relevant. There were a lot of photos that involved the tattoos that he did admit, but he also didn't admit a lot of other photos of tattoos. And in any case, it didn't really seem like that was really something that was very important for the trial. And also one piece of evidence that involved some incident from Charlotte Reed's life that, once again, the judge said wasn't really that important. And the judge pointed out that the defense attorney also didn't complain about any of this evidence not being submitted at the time. So why complain about it now? And most of them weren't relevant anyway. Another pretty preposterous claim I thought was that Rivers said that by being wheeled in on his wheelchair, that was somehow biasing the jury because the wheelchair showed that he was under incarceration. But the judge pointed out there was really no other way to get him there other than through this wheelchair, through the public corridors, because not all the floors had private corridors to escort him in. There was a complaint that the judge zoomed in one day because he had COVID and come in person. Okay, once again, no one objected at the time. Why does that matter? And probably most preposterous was the final complaint that there was insufficient evidence for the jury to come up with this verdict. And the judge pointed out the evidence was overwhelming. So the judge threw out Rivers' complaint about the trial. And from that point on, we moved to sentencing, which surprised me. I actually didn't know that we were going to go to sentencing on that day. And the sentencing goes where the judge basically recites the previous convictions that Dana Rivers had in the trial. And then the prosecutor recites a letter that was sent by the brother of one of the murder victims, of the brother of Patricia Wright. And this was a very moving part of the trial where the brother, Richard, explains how much trauma this caused him and the families, how tired he is about Dana Rivers constantly trying to prolong this whole process, how Rivers really has shown no human decency throughout this whole thing. He also talks about how important Patricia Wright was in his life, how she was his sort of a peacemaker in the family, how she was also an artist and was depicting, shortly before her death, was creating a portrait, a family portrait. I mean, it was a very, very touching letter that really hammered home the message of how depraved this crime was. And the judge, everyone in the courtroom was moved. The judge was clearly moved. He said so himself. And he went on to issue multiple sentences of things like 25 years to life, one of which was without parole because that was for the special circumstances of the murder, which made it a uniquely bad murder case, plus sort of lighter sentences for things like the arson, for the weapons charges. But it's pretty clear that this was Rivers going to spend the rest of his life in prison. And the end was really another very harrowing note where the judge says, he was always told that, or he always believed that you should love the criminal and hate the crime. But this case was unusually hard because, as he pointed out, this was the worst crime he's had to adjudicate in his entire 33-year career. And I think that really just goes to show how awful of a case this was for everyone involved. It's good that justice has finally been served. And while there probably will be an appeals process, knowing how much that Rivers has already prolonged this trial, hopefully in the meantime, this can offer some closure. And with that, I'd like to thank everyone for watching and following this trial.